This is a story of the human spirit, the spirit that brought the founders of Ein Gedi to settle in this place, a remote, isolated spot surrounded on three sides by a hostile border and a natural border of steep cliffs, deep canyons, desert, and the Dead Sea.
Born on the wings of that spirit, I came to Ein Gedi in 1960, 4 years after the founders. A naive, romantic Israeli girl, born in another kibbutz, imbued with values of ideology. I was captivated by the magic of the place and I bound my life to kibbutz Ein Gedi. This is my story.
There is desert in the world, and there is sea. And the spot where the sea kisses the desert and the desert kisses the sea is sheer grace. In this oasis, in sharp contrast to the desert surrounding it and the Dead Sea at its edge, takes place a fascinating, spectacular and unique encounter of elements of nature, landscape and humankind.
What is this place? What is this kibbutz Ein Gedi? Is it but a collection of buildings at the foot of barren cliffs overlooking the Dead Sea? Or is it a living entity with a personality of its own?
Ayala, a veteran member of Ein Gedi, looks back over 50 years and describes how the kibbutz was built. Assisted by materials documented in the kibbutz journal, photographs and home movies from the archives, Ayala tries to understand and narrate the dreams and aspirations, motivations, the guiding values of the founders' generation and those who followed in their footsteps. Dedicated with love and esteem to the founders of Ein Gedi on the 50th anniversary of the kibbutz. Primeval splendor and wonders of creation exist in age-old harmony. Water flows unhindered down waterfalls and arid canyons. Who coverest thyself with light as with a garment, who stretchest out the heavens like a curtain. Sunrises and sunsets have adorned the Dead Sea each day since creation. The ibex is king of the Ein Gedi oasis. From its perch on the cliffs it looks down on the weird creatures entering the reserve and ponders. Who are these who invade my domain and disturb my peace? Will these youngsters succeed in preserving these primeval landscapes and live alongside us, the prior denizens of Ein Gedi, in harmony and solidarity? Living in close proximity to a nature reserve, declared by the United Nations as one of the most important reserves in the world, is no simple matter. How does one reconcile the contradiction of the human urge to visit and observe nature with the wish to preserve it untouched? Can man-made landscaping converge with nature to harmoniously supplement the wonders of creation?
I have yet to see a leopard with my own eyes, though there have been numerous sightings of leopards in Ein Gedi during the decades. The last known leopard is an old male who invades the kibbutz to snack on cats and dogs, and occasionally a goat from the petting zoo. He killed my grandson's dog, causing much grief in the family. Yet no attack on humans has ever been documented. What would be more exotic than sitting on your porch at twilight and receiving a visit from a sexy spotted male with velvet moves and burning bright eyes? It happened to a member of the kibbutz, and she was brave enough to take a picture.
Traces of human settlement in ancient Ein Gedi are evident in the many archaeological sites here, as well as in references in ancient Jewish and apocryphal written sources.
Here is the oasis of Ein Gedi, spread before us with its multitude of ancient sites, which never fail to impress me. At the spring of Ein Gedi, excavations exposed a Chalcolithic temple dating back 6,000 years.
King David dwelt in strongholds at Ein Gedi and hid in a cave at Nachal David, a streambed named for him. Excavations in Tel Goren indicate an initial settlement in the 6th century BCE. In recent years, an archaeologist and a member of the kibbutz, Dr. Gideon Hadass, has been gradually uncovering a Jewish village from the Second Temple era, and there is more to come. The crowning achievement of all the archaeological finds is the ancient synagogue from the Byzantine era, with its splendid mosaic floor and the important inscription presenting verses from Genesis, the names of months in the Hebrew calendar, and the 12 zodiac signs. Echoes of Ein Gedi's prosperity in biblical times sound in the Song of Solomon. My beloved is unto me as a cluster of camphor in the vineyards of Ein Gedi. At the end of the War of Independence, Ein Gedi was conquered by a company of soldiers who arrived on a raft from the Dead Sea, where they set up a small outpost. In 1953, a dirt road was laid down, and a Nachal military settlement was established, one of the first 5 built in strategic locations along the borders of Israel. That expressed the formal recognition and support of the state and the military in the settlement. It was the beginning of a permanent settlement in Ein Gedi and determined its inclusion within the borders of the state. In 1953, before Kibbutz Ein Gedi was founded, everything is virginal and pristine, primeval. The Dead Sea water lapping the cliffs is where the paved road runs today. The Dead Sea shoreline has retreated scores of meters away.
People who come here for the first time look at us and wonder, are you crazy? Have you come here for the rest of your life? Or are you an assorted company on a tour of duty? The Ein Gedi Journal, 1958. Ein Gedi enchanted me by being at the end of the world. It enchanted me with its newness. And it's genuine. Everything I tell you is genuine. This is no show. It enchanted me with its newness and an enterprising spirit. I said, this is the spearhead of pioneering.
You, whose innocence of faith is young and bold, come, join us. Those words were written on a banner at the foundation ceremony of Kibbutz Ein Gedi in January 1956. The dramatic, fiery style was genuine and reflected the true spirit of pioneering Israel.
These words excited, enraptured, captured hearts and helped us face the hard labor, the heat, the loneliness and the distance from our parents. Indeed, we were young and bold, imbued with innocence, purity and true faith.
When you look in the literature, you see that when you found a settlement, you're expected to dance the hora till daylight. There's no choice. You push the tables aside and dance to oblivion. The kibbutz founders wanted to work the land and create a new kind of person. They strove to establish a society based on social justice and equality of the value of human life and work. From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. Everybody got the same wages, if you can call it that. It was more like a meager pocket money. It would be a pure, idealistic society, with no private property and no inheritance rights. Everything belongs to the community. The whole kibbutz is a sort of intimate, supportive, extended family, guaranteeing mutual aid and social support for life.
It's a great idea. We managed to live by its light for 3 generations. At the 10th anniversary party, members of Ein Gedi dressed up as pioneers from the early 1900s. It was done humorously, yet in their hearts, the first founders of Ein Gedi did see themselves as following in their footsteps.
This is a memorial plaque commemorating the kibbutz movement, located south of the Sea of Galilee, where the first kibbutz was founded in 1910. Engraved in stone are words of dedication and the names of all the kibbutzim in chronological order.
Dgania Aleph, Kinneret, Dgania Bet, Bet Zera is number 20 and Ein Gedi is number 215. At the peak, there were 270 kibbutzim. My parents as young pioneers in 1926. They immigrated from Poland, and in historic perspective, we can appreciate how fortunate they were. Everyone knows what occurred in Poland in World War II. I know how difficult the geographical distance between us was, yet they always supported my choice and were proud of it. To this day, I am uplifted by their unconditional love, always transmitting the message, our Ainka will be just fine. Each year, when I visit their grave, I am aware that it was them and their peers who forged our way of life in this country. In such a remote and isolated place as Ein Gedi, the fellowship of friends replaces family. Our parents made us feel that they were proud of our pioneering endeavor. When I arrived at Ein Gedi, I was enchanted by the spirit, by the fact that a group of young people in their 20s were creating something new from the very beginning. It captivated me, beginning anew. Suddenly, everybody around me was young. I was on the verge of ending my military service, and then I met my future husband, who was one of the founders. I wanted, like my parents, to do something that matters.
The kibbutz aspired to relieve women of their classical duties, children, home and cooking, and transfer most familial functions to the collective community. The members ate in the dining room, did the laundry collectively. Children spent most of the day in children's houses and slept there at night as well, after spending a few hours in the evening at their parents' houses.
They were terribly young, it appears, men and women just out of their teens, when they came to this country some 50 years ago to reside here as first pioneers, and people would stare and think, what do these strange folk want here?
These words were written about the first pioneers, those of the second Aliyah who came to this country in the early 1900s. The founders of Ein Gedi followed in their footsteps with less dramatic pathos, with an Israeli accent, and the songs were written and performed by the Nachal Entertainment Troupe. Their first task? Prepare the land for farming.
For the passing of decades diminished the land and transformed it to stones and to dust. With claws of grey iron and with our bare hands, we wage war on the stones as we must. Subsoiler and rooter again and again in frustrating effort all day, till the stone at long last is discovered, and then we grasp it and drag it away.
That young pioneer who is planting is me. This is how we used to plant among the rocks, and I often used to prop up the plants with stones. I worked there for 2 years, and I loved working in the fields, surrounded by the exotic landscape.
Once the plants are in the ground, you have to water them. There are 3 main water sources in the Ein Gedi Reserve: Nachal David, Nachal Arugot, and the Ein Gedi Spring. Over the years, agreements were concluded between the kibbutz and the authorities on how much water the kibbutz could use and how much had to be left to flow in the springs. The kibbutz takes care not to exceed its water allotment and lives in harmony with nature and with those appointed to preserve it.
Just a little bit more and we surely will see the green of our fields come to light, with the cliffs in the background magnificent, free. Indeed, what a marvelous sight.
How did we make a living for the first 20 years? The hot climate turned out to be a wonderful advantage for agriculture, and Ein Gedi's winter vegetable crops cornered the market from December to April. They were our mainstay and primary source of income for the first 20 years. Tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, eggplants, squashes, melons and others. The men were in the fields all day, bending down and planting, bending down and weeding, bending down and picking, loading the wagons and starting all over again. The women would join them in the early morning and late afternoon.
From dawn to dusk, the crops are picked and flow in from all directions. In the evening, we all come to the dining hall and exult over the truck, how overloaded it is, and we speculate about how much the crop is worth. Then we go to dinner, bone tired, Yet there is a thrill in this bonding over a common cause.
It was extremely hard work, bending over all day, and yet we were happy, imbued with pioneering spirit. We felt we were doing something important. Members, men and women, returned from picking the tomatoes, the ultimate emblem of the vegetable garden. 20 years later, the vegetable garden lost its glory and was replaced by tourism. And the journal says, Engedi's tomatoes have turned into myth, yet myth is a basis to build on. Then we grew pomelos. I still have a pomelo tree in my garden since then. Today we have a mango grove, planted in the modern way, with monitored irrigation and fertilization. But the crowning glory of Engedi's orchards to this day is the dates.
The date palm is the most faithful companion of the Ein Gedi oasis, from ancient settlement to the present. Many date pits from the First and Second Temple era were found in Ein Gedi's excavations. Today, Ein Gedi produces about 230 tons a year. Steep cliffs, deep canyons, desert and the Dead Sea were all natural deterrents to enemies. Being remote from other settlements was beneficial, and we never had that living on the border mentality. Still, in the first years, the proximity to the hostile Jordanian border caused several security incidents. Some were perpetrated by Bedouins shepherding their herds nearby, others by Jordanian policemen patrolling the border.
In 1960, the Jordanians opened fire on 2 hikers above Nachal David, killing one and wounding the other. The monument is in memory of the one who died, Giora Barzilai. Every February, we climb to the monument. Even I did it a few times with my kids.
About a month after the fatal event, a baby was born and was named Giora after the victim. 22 years later, he was killed in the Lebanon War. Ein Gedi organizes an international semi-marathon race each year in his memory. In 1995, Giora's brother Tomer was killed while working in Ein Gedi's fields. Since then, the race has been called the Giora and Tomer Run Race. We call it Ein Gedi's Run for Peace.
Scores of kibbutz members, including teenagers, operate the race voluntarily. My job is to run the information station. May 4th, 1960. I am a soldier. I successfully transferred from the Air Force to the Nachal and was posted to Ein Gedi. This journey will determine the course of my life. After several hours of waiting in Sodom, I was picked up by a command car from the kibbutz, loaded to capacity with supplies and members, including my future husband. 3 hours later, after traveling on a bumpy dirt road, I arrive at Ein Gedi, and this is what I see. And I still choose to stay. Don't ask me why.
In 1959, 3 years after the initial settlement, Ein Gedi moved up to its permanent location and began to build the kibbutz as you see it today. 73 members, 10 children. No road, no telephone, only a rundown army radio. No neighboring settlements, only vast isolation and desert all around.
I didn't think our lives would be so grey and isolated. No winter, no spring, no trees, no fields. The Ein Gedi Journal, 1961. In 1958, cementing the roof of the first dining hall which eventually became the guest house restaurant. This is the location of the guest house. This is the settlement compound, and this is the field where the synagogue will be found. For some reason, it was never cultivated. It was probably too rocky. This is Eli Ron, founder of the landscaping of Ein Gedi. He started working in 1958 when he arrived in Ein Gedi. He hasn't stopped since. He used to cut the lawns with a manual lawnmower. He planted trees with his own hands. He still keeps mowing lawns today in his old age, occasionally joined by dogs and children. He even has a poem written about him.
Our gardens are blooming, our fields are all green. The landscape is lovely this June, for we have acquired an Eli machine to mow and to weed and to prune.
In 1963, Eli received an award in appreciation of his endeavors in developing and maintaining the landscape.
Nitza and Anna, two veteran members, are the heart and soul of the garden, familiar with each flower and tree. We see them here in their watering suits. For the last 30 years, they have been the architects of the garden, deciding what is to be planted and where.
The lawn was planted by hand. The boys dug holes in the wet soil, and the girls planted small tufts in each hole.
An asphalt road is a crucial issue, and much is written about it in the journals of the first years. This group of young people standing on the border by the cliff north of Nachal David feel that they are at the end of the world and long for a paved road.
In 1962, the asphalt road to Sodom was completed. A bus from Tel Aviv via Beersheba reaches Ein Gedi. In 1971, after the Six-Day War, the road to Jerusalem was completed. It was a most significant change in the development of the kibbutz and the lives of its members. No longer an isolated border settlement, we were connected to the state.
Beware of floods in the lowlands, warns the weathercaster before forecasting rain in the Judean hills. Almost every winter, we stand in awe, facing the mighty torrents of water flowing down from an altitude of 800 meters high in the Judean hills to Ein Gedi, 412 below sea level. We try not to provoke its wrath, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. As when we desperately need to deliver a truckload of tomatoes to the market in Tel Aviv. Occasionally, we were cut off for several days and had our bread, milk and vegetables delivered by helicopter. I myself had to ride a 10-inch pipe above a gushing current over Nachal Arugot streambed. A regular bedtime story for the grandchildren.
In the 1980s, the state provides a solution and builds a bridge over Nachal Arugot. This bridge fails during a mighty flood in May 2000. The road south towards the hotels is blocked by serious floods, and occasionally the road north to Jerusalem is blocked as well.
If you are privileged to be in Ein Gedi on an especially rainy day, you will see one of the rarest natural phenomena of the region. Scores of waterfalls flowing down the mountains from every crevasse and ravine. This is probably what the prophet Amos meant, and the mountains shall drop sweet wine, and all hills shall melt.
What could be more attractive for Israeli politicians than a picture in the paper with the pioneers of Ein Gedi? In naive Israel of the 60s and 70s, it was a winning item.
We were visited by grand national figures, Ben-Gurion, President Ben-Zvi, Prime Minister Eshkol, and certainly Golda, the mother figure of the state. These visits conveyed the respect and appreciation bestowed on us by all of Israel. BG even took a dip in our sulfur pools.
And in later years, Presidents Navon, Herzog, Weizmann, and Shimon Peres, who has accompanied Ein Gedi from its very beginning to its jubilee.
שאני בא לעין גדי, אני טועם טעם שהוא מאוד נדיר בארצנו.
Every time I come to Ein Gedi, I taste the flavor of true excitement. When you add the scandalous beauty of Ein Gedi to the wild pioneering of its founders, you can't help being touched. There's no place like this in the world.
אי אפשר שלא להתרגש. אין מקום כזה בעולם.
The story of the apartments where I lived on my years in the kibbutz reflects the development of residential culture in Ein Gedi. My first apartment was 29 square meters. In the 60s, a new neighborhood of 2-room apartments was built, and I, as a certified conqueror of the wilderness, am on the ground floor. I have a garden. In the early 70s, children began sleeping in their parents' homes. With 2 sons and a baby girl, we moved to a new apartment, 54 square meters. I planted a garden. In 1983, I moved to my permanent home and begin to conquer the wilderness. Looks like my next move will be to the hereafter. A new dining hall for the members is built in 1972. Previously, we had our meals with the guests at the guest house. In 1962, 3 tiny baobab saplings were planted in the guest house garden. Two of them adorn the guest house, and the third is now on the lawn by the dining hall. The baobab tree by the dining hall is the kibbutz tree. Kindergarten children listen to stories at its feet, and in the evening, garden parties and sing-alongs are held under its branches. This tree is the only one in Israel. Everybody visiting takes their picture under it.
She's 21, he's 25. Taking a break from selecting tomatoes, March 61.
Once, there was a call from the audience, a regular Sophia Loren and Paul Newman. 2 months later, on May 4th, 1 year after I arrived in Ein Gedi, we get married. I was looking for a reason to stay, and someone smarter than me. For him, willingness to stay in Ein Gedi was enough to propose.
Naturally, love blossomed among the young people, and weddings became a thriving business. Parents and relatives travelled all day long on a bumpy dirt road to reach Ein Gedi, and when they finally got there, they realized that the initiation rite of being a parent of a member of Kibbutz Ein Gedi had barely begun. The young folks took it to the very edge. The ceremony was held in Nachal David. Heading the convoy was the young couple in a decorated carriage, followed by the whole kibbutz on a tractor-drawn wagon. And then there was a hike by foot, and here it is, the ceremonial canopy. Sometimes 4 couples were getting hitched at the same time.
My Polish aunts from Tel Aviv never forgot this experience. They were wearing the wrong shoes.
In the evening, there was an artistic performance on the grass, and later the guests would have to return all the way home. The day after the ceremony, we don our wedding clothes again and pose by the waterfall. 9 months after the wedding.
At the beginning of the 9th month of pregnancy, the women would be flown out in a Piper aircraft to the veteran kibbutz in the Jazreel Valley, or to their parents. Starting in 1964, we went to Be'er Sheva to give birth. I was the first to do so with my second son. Every arrival of a newborn baby was celebrated by the whole kibbutz. Since the road north has been built, babies are born in Jerusalem. A year after the wedding, I became a mother. The blonde hair comes from the father. He kept saying he couldn't adjust the camera lighting because I was too dark and the baby was too light. This baby now runs the cash register at the guest house.
Except for the mountains, everyone, even the fathers, are so young here.
After the road to Sodom was paved, grandparents could visit their grandchildren. Here are 3 generations, mother, daughter and grandson.
Sleeping in collective children's houses and not in the parents' homes is an incomparable kibbutz innovation. The idea was that the children would get the best conditions. Their living quarters were better, stone houses versus wooden huts or tents, and they were taken care of by the most educated and talented members. The principle was to create equality between men and women and enable parents to work long hours and volunteer for missions of national importance.
Growing up in a children's house was great fun. There was a special atmosphere and camaraderie. You shower together, eat together, celebrate together, and drive the caretakers nuts together. After showering, they put on clean clothes and t-shirts, just enough to star in a New Year's greeting card. I myself was raised that way and have nothing but fond memories. My happy childhood consisted of nature, freedom and simplicity, but others, both mothers and children, did suffer. I wasn't scared by it. I went with the flow. I had no problem with it. It wasn't an issue.
It was obvious that the children would determine the future of the young settlement. The editor of the journal writes, "We all know that the sound of children's jubilant voices is the sound of an anchor lodged in Ein Gedi's soil. Today we escort our eldest 6 children to their first grade, a first in their life and a first for Ein Gedi."
6 young bashful children with pencils and books are learning to write and to read, while parents and teachers with satisfied looks think Ein Gedi has prospered indeed.
The first classes consisted of 5 or 6 children, a few in the later years. Today, Ein Gedi's education system has 300 children, from nursery school to high school. The following poem expresses the feelings of raising kids in Ein Gedi. It was written for our first children's high school graduation, the parents in their 40s.
The parents of first children have it harder than you know. No grandma here to give advice and help the babies grow. No voice of wise experience, they're really on their own and feel at times they're just too young to do it all alone. The parents of first children find it hard to sleep at night. They wonder, will we make it? Will it come out all right? They think one child is not enough, we must have 5 each year, or else we can't maintain a school and teach the children here. The parents of first children face a challenge every day. They share a great responsibility in every way. They're only 20-something, but they never hesitate, for though the burden's heavy, the rewards are really great.
On the 10th anniversary of the kibbutz, we attempted to make a picture of the whole population, 55 children and 90 members. This is my eldest son, and this is my second son trying to escape because the grass was itchy. Every year at springtime, I feel stifled by the mountains and deserts surrounding me, and I am flooded with longings for flowers and greenery of the north. And so, every year, on spring vacation from school, we take the kids and travel north, to the cyclamens of the Carmel, the irises of the Gilboa, the snow on the Golan Heights, and of course the Jordan River of my childhood that flows beneath Beit Zera.
The small, isolated kibbutz took 15 years to acquire 100 members. Many people left. The journal reported, economically, 90 members can exist, but from the social aspect, it's hard, it's constricting. Not the threat of poverty hangs over our heads, but a threat of social and cultural stagnation.
How does a small kibbutz grow?
Groups from the youth movements were the main social component. Over the years, 12 of these groups reached Ein Gedi.
The guys from the youth movement are your comrades in the military service. They remained your social and emotional peers for life. It is a friendship refined by common experiences during adolescence, the army service, which usually includes a war or two.
A second option for growth, girls from veteran kibbutzim joining Ein Gedi. They always harbored deep longings for the green of the valley, the wildflowers of the non the veteran kibbutzim they grew up in. However, de facto, they were excellent pioneering material. The fact remains, almost none of them left. Another option, newcomers from the West. The new immigrants brought fresh colors and cultural diversity to Ein Gedi. They added flavor to the monolithic Sabra society. Some arrived at the kibbutz as volunteers, married kibbutz members and stayed on. Others arrived as families. They came from England, France, Germany, Finland, the United States, Canada, South Africa and other countries. City families joined the kibbutz, and some met kibbutz members, fell in love and followed their hearts.
On the 30th anniversary, all members of the kibbutz posed for a group picture. There is something magical about kibbutz togetherness. It gives you a wonderful feeling that you are part of something important and uplifting. As you give of yourself, you are enriched spiritually and emotionally.
The kibbutz is probably the only place in the world where complete and direct democracy exists. The General Assembly, where every member has the right to vote, makes all major decisions. The Assembly confirms acceptance of new members, elects senior officials, votes for resolutions concerning decisive issues in education, economy, fundamental changes related to lifestyle and income. The desire to study accompanied the young members from the very earliest days of the kibbutz. It was the reason why many members left the kibbutz during those first years. Finally, a norm was set with a quota of students. In the end, almost anybody who wanted to study could do so. Students were exempted from work. Tuition and living expenses were paid by the kibbutz.
I studied Bible and history of the people of Israel at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Those were marvelous years of my life. The cemetery of Ein Gedi. Buried here are members and children who died of disease and accidents, and sons of Ein Gedi who were killed in Israel's too many wars. This is a soldier's grave. The headstones are the same throughout the country. In an exhibition for the 50th anniversary, we decided to remember our members and children who are no longer with us. They are planted in our garden as a metaphor for the Garden of Paradise. The hardship meant little compared with the satisfaction of contributing to the togetherness. It's a tremendous value and it's worth preserving. At the end of the Shabbat evening, organized by the Culture Committee, the guys would stay put and sing together, dance the hora and circle dances, with an accordionist in their midst. Holidays received a special attention. A unique tradition emerged for each holiday. On Rosh Hashanah, we elected the persons of the year and presented the events from the past year. In Chanukah, we have a torch run from Mitzvah and a lantern procession for the toddlers and lighting of the kibbutz menorah. In January, we celebrate the anniversary of the kibbutz, and each decade we prepare a special show. And then the beloved Purim and Passover Seder, where the kids are acting out the Exodus of Egypt and staging the Chagadia. On Independence Day, there is a fun parade followed by singing and folk dancing.
The pinnacle of Ein Gedi's artistic creation was the production of a musical of children's songs called A Party of Clowns. It even went on a road tour throughout Israel. All this cultural activity was done voluntarily, after work hours. Only the cultural coordinator was employed part-time.
When I ask myself what are my most vivid and moving memories of kibbutz life, what did I love most of all, I remember the swirling circles of the Hora dancers and the impassioned community singing. Such an uplifting of the spirit is surely unparalleled.
From the very beginning, members of Ein Gedi realized that it was a wonderful place for spa tourism. In 1962, a small guest house was established in the shacks that were brought up from the original compound. In 1963, the first sulfur baths were opened in a primitive asbestos structure. The guests were, of course, only Israeli. The paved road to Jerusalem connected Ein Gedi to the state and allowed major development of the guest house. The vegetable garden lost its exclusive status and glory. Only then did the kibbutz begin to understand that the curative qualities and marvelous landscapes with which the kibbutz was blessed were the bedrock of its existence.
For the first 30 years, the guest house maintained its kibbutz character. The guests remained loyal to us for years and years. The staff was kibbutz members only. I remember cleaning guests' rooms more thoroughly than I did my own apartment. Our guest house is characterized by a homey personal attitude which results in thousands of returning guests from Israel and abroad. Most of the staff are still members of Ein Gedi who own the place and give it their heart and soul.
Yosker moved to Ein Gedi in 1977 as the parent of a member. Born in Bad Kissingen, German is his native tongue. Much to his credit is the conceptual transformation of the guest house towards foreign tourism, mainly from German-speaking countries. Yosker is the father of the warm, familial approach to all the guests. In 2001, Yosker was awarded a silver decoration from the town of Bad Kissingen.
I started working at the guest house in 1989 and discovered a whole new world. I meet people from all over the world at their moments of fun. We take pictures together. I give them a tour of the garden, invite them into my private home, and accept their compliments about the beauty of the place. A week later, they leave to return the following springtime.
The new spa was built in the early 1980s. A number of vital factors were taken into account in deciding upon the location: proximity to the sulfur spring, a reasonable distance from the main road, and a consideration of the future sea level if the 2cc canal project ever materializes.
The Ein-Gedi Country Guest House looks to the future. We intend to upgrade, improve and expand it while maintaining the unique values which characterize the place, its nature, landscape and people.
Over the years, the kibbutz landscape has diversified, and it has been enriched with hundreds of plant species from all over the world. In 1994, the kibbutz was declared an international botanical garden, the only botanical garden in the world which flourishes in the midst of a living, breathing human settlement. From its beginnings in wilderness and loneliness to an international botanical garden is all man's creation, stemming from faith and values.
Each time I walk along the kibbutz paths, I feel the garden's beauty. The colors and perfumes, the splendid harmony of all the elements. The grey-green palms frame the view of the mountain, the sculpture-like cacti with its many blooms, the lush dark green of the tropical vegetation, basking in our warm winter. And the contrast, this contrast between the greenery and the perpetually arrayed mountains. Leaders from all over the world are brought to view this beautiful symbolic implementation of the Zionist vision. Helmut Kohl visited Ein Gedi in 1994, 2 years after Gorbachev's visit in 1992. In 2000, the president of China came to visit.
For a man is as the tree of the field. The kibbutz and the tree grew together, their trunks thickened, their roots deepened, and their branches intertwined and reached upward.
The kibbutz tree is with us in our moments of joy and time of grieving. It is a mute witness, silently counting the passage of time. It accompanies members on their final journey as the funeral procession passes by its shade. And when I stand before my Maker and am asked, "What have you done with your life for the state?" I will point to Ein Gedi and say, "This is what I have done." Oh, I'm in tears already. This is my heritage. This picture is from summer 2006. Father, mother, 4 children, 3 spouses and 8 grandchildren. And this is how the house looks when they all come to visit. On the 50th anniversary of Ein Gedi, Tamar, my daughter, greeted on behalf of all those born on Ein Gedi.
Summer holiday, I am 7, and my mother walks with me through the kibbutz of her childhood near the Sea of Galilee, holding hands, walking through the fields, listening to birds, and her eyes are soft with happiness, with joy too great for words. Now 30 years have gone, and yet the picture still remains. Mother and daughter hand in hand walk down the kibbutz lanes. Does my daughter, my darling child, the girl to whom I gave birth, see how happy I am to return to the loveliest place on earth? Her hand is in mine. Does she see just what this place means to me? Can she feel the strong bond as she clings to my hand that unites my heart's blood with the blood of this land?
As winter comes, our tree loses its leaves. Falling leaves may be a metaphor for the decline of the original kibbutz idea, as conceived by its founders almost 100 years ago. Extreme changes are taking place across the kibbutz movement. This process should be regarded as historic, an evolutionary sequence, and not as a failure or tragedy.
I was born, I grew up, I made my choice. I married, I gave birth, I matured, I grew old, and I'll be buried in the kibbutz. There's no other place for me.
Two things can happen to people's dreams. They either become true or they're shattered. Both happened to the kibbutz dream. The dream of building an Israeli agricultural community which exists in harmony, equality and mutual support was realized. The dream of changing human nature was shattered, probably because it was unrealistic from the outset. Amos Oz. Every individual and society needs a spiritual dimension. The kibbutz may have been the most elevated secular sanctification that grew in Israel. It's hard to imagine what this country, its values and borders would have been like without the kibbutz movement.
A vision of the future kibbutz may focus on the development of humanistic Jewish nature of Israel as a model state for other countries, in the spirit of the prophets and the Declaration of Independence.
And it shall come to pass at the end of days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established at the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall follow unto it, and many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem.
And who knows? Perhaps in the coming millennium, young people who do not live for materialistic gain only will rise and start it all over again.
In 2006, the kibbutz celebrated its 50th anniversary. The founders were privileged to see their dream come true. Ein Gedi has become a flourishing multi-generational settlement.
Occasionally longing for the past to overcome us. In retrospect, it seems so splendid. True longings are always for what will never come again.
And if the day should come, if we should wake and find that it was all a dream, a picture in our mind, still it was beautiful, it was so fair and free. Who cares what time will bring to you and me?
One of the first sons of the kibbutz said, Perhaps I'm no longer a part of Ein Gedi, but Ein Gedi will always be a part of me. Many of those born here have left Ein Gedi.
Each and every one of the members of Ein Gedi feels and knows they have created something of value in their lifetime. They have left a mark. They experience the secret of unity, without which it wouldn't have been possible. They were privileged to take part in one of the most fascinating experiments of human culture in general, and the renewed land of Israel in particular.
I'll say how it is, if you'll let me. Imagine our lives as a bin, and so that the bin won't be empty, whatever we have, we put in. We give of ourselves every minute, our work and possessions we share, and if we should need something in it, we take what we know will be there. But the bin has one feature, though nobody knows if it's good or it's bad, which I now will disclose. It's not like a flowing spring, it's not like a running brook, and we never can take more things than we put in before we took. And once in a while, if it seems that our lives are all empty and bleak, with no joy and no hope and no dreams, then into the bin we must peek. And we'll see we've forgotten giving, and we've been all too eager to take. But the secret of unity in living is giving for giving's sake. The fine art of knowing to give and to give, Ein Gedi has proven the choice way to live.
6,000 years have passed since people first settled in the Ein Gedi oasis. In our generation, those people were the members of Kibbutz Ein Gedi, who felt that what they were doing was the most important thing in the world.